The city never really sleeps, but it does get quieter. At 3:17 a.m., Brooklyn's streets hummed with a kind of tired stillness. Emma Carter pulled off her helmet, ran a gloved hand through damp hair, and let out a slow breath.
Another call, another fire, another child barely breeding be alive.
She didn't think much of heroism anymore, it was just muscle memory now. Her shift had technically ended over an hour ago, but paperwork and cleanup never respected clocks. The others had gone home. Emma, as usual, stayed behind, delaying the inevitable silence of her apartment. As she drove home through the industrial stretch near the East River, headlights lit up smoke. Her heart kicked. A car, no, an SUV, was turned halfway into a fence, flames licking from under the hood. The front had crumpled against a light post. No sirens.
No ambulance.
Emma slammed the brakes and jumped out, her gear bag already in hand. Fire danced angrily, catching in the engine. A man lay motionless behind the wheel, his face bloodied. Dead, she guessed. But then, a sound. High-pitched.
Frantic. A child's cry.
Emma's instincts snapped into gear. She yanked open the rear door. It stuck. She kicked it once, twice, and it groaned open. Inside, a toddler, maybe 3 years old, was strapped into a car seat, wailing, choking on smoke.
A boy.
Tear-streaked cheeks. Brown curls.
Teeny Spider-Man pajama.
Hey, it's okay, she whispered, unbuckling him. I've got you.
The fire crackled loudly.
Metal popped. She pulled him out just as the flames surged through the front seats. Half carrying, half running, she sprinted 20 feet away and dropped to her knees, shielding him with her body. Moments later, the SUV exploded behind her. The boy sobbed into her shoulder. Emma held him tighter. Sirens didn't come. Instead, headlights, several of them, cut through the smoke. A black Escalade screeched to a stop. Then another.
Doors flew open.
Men in suits spilled out, moving fast, organized. Emma reached for her radio, heart racing. We're here, one of them barked. Is he alive? She stood protectively.
Who the hell are you?
A man with slicked-back silver hair stepped forward. Calm, composed. Not frantic like someone who had just lost a kid. I'm Tony Russo, he said.
Dead boyes my godson. Emma's eyes narrowed.
Where's EMS? Why aren't the cops here? A younger man scanned the crash site. Driver's gone, he muttered into a headset. Cars registered under a shell corp. This wasn't random. Tony turned back to her. Look, I appreciate what you did, but we need to get Luca out of here.
Luca?
Emma looked down. The boy, Luca, clung to her shirt, whimpering. He's inhaled smoke. He needs to be checked out. He could have burns, internal injuries. We have medical people. She shook her head.
Then take me with you.
Tony raised an eyebrow. Why?
Because you don't know who the hell you are.
And I don't hand kids over to men who show up with armored cars and no sirens. A pause. A long one. Tony finally nodded.
Fine.
Bring her. Emma didn't realize until much later how rare that agreement had been. They drove north, out of Brooklyn, toward the Hudson Valley. Emma cradled Luca in the back seat, murmuring to him, letting his sobs slow. His tiny fingers wrapped around hers. They arrived at a sprawling estate tucked behind stone walls and iron gates. Security men waved them in. Inside, the mansion was coldly modern, like a luxury prison. A woman in scrubs took Luca from Emma gently, speaking Italian under her breath. He cried, reaching back for Emma.
It made something twist deep inside her.
You saved his life, Tony said beside her. He wouldn't have made it another minute. Emma folded her arms.
What the hell is this place?
Before Tony could answer, a man entered the foyer. Tall, mid-30s, sharp black suit, loosened tie. His face, handsome in a brutal kind of way, froze when he saw Luca. He crossed the room in seconds and dropped to his knees.
Figlio mio, ebreted, voice cracking.
Luca threw himself into the man's arms. Emma watched as he clutched the boy like salvation itself. Then he looked up. Their eyes locked. You, he said. His voice was quiet but heavy. You pulled him from the car? Emma nodded slowly. Yes. He stood.
I'm Nico Moretti.
Luca is my son. Thank you. She swallowed. You're welcome. He studied her, eyes intense. Not just examining, measuring. A man used to reading people.
Judging intention.
She didn't flinch. I owe you, he said.
Emma shook her head.
Don't worry about it. I wasn't offering to pay you. She raised an eyebrow. I'm saying, Nico said, I owe you more than I know how to repay. The next day, she tried to return to normal. But her car had been detailed, tires replaced. A small envelope had been slipped under her apartment door, a handwritten note, just one word, thank you, and a cafe gift card with $500 loaded onto it. Emma tossed it all in a drawer. But a week later, she was called to a minor incident, an elderly woman who fell on the subway steps, and found a bouquet of peonies waiting on her locker afterward. No note. Just her name on a folded tag. She ignored that one too. But the next time it was coffee. Her exact order. And the time after that, a children's book delivered to her station, one she'd mentioned in passing during the ambulance ride, to calm Luca. That time, she hesitated. She ran her thumb over the spine of the book for a long minute before putting it back in the bag. Then, a few days later, her lieutenant pulled her aside. You have a visitor, he said, grinning.
The good-looking kind.
Emma stepped into the hallway and found Nico leaning against the wall, dark jeans and an open jacket over a pressed shirt. He looked up and smiled, just a flicker. I want to buy you lunch, he said. She crossed her arms. Why? Luca's been asking about you. He calls you his angel. A pause. I'd like to see you again too. Emma hesitated. Everything in her training screamed this man was dangerous.
Every instinct said, turn away.
Go home. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see threat. She saw grief. And gratitude.
And something like hope.
One lunch, she said. Public place. Nico nodded. And just like that, she stepped into a world she never meant to enter, one decision at a time. Lunch was supposed to be simple.
Public, safe, quick.
That's what Emma told herself when she met Nico at a small waterfront restaurant on the edge of Manhattan. The kind of place with clean lines, big windows, and enough people around that she could pretend he wasn't the kind of man who traveled with bodyguards. He arrived exactly on time, dressed casually for once, and with Luca in tow. The boy ran straight to Emma the moment he saw her, throwing his arms around her neck. She froze, then laughed softly and lifted him onto her lap.
You remember me.
Luca nodded against her shoulder. You smell like fire trucks, he said. Nico's mouth curved slightly. He's been drawing you, he said. Every day.
Stick figure and flamme.
He insists you have wings. Emma smiled despite herself. He's creative. Lunch was easier than she expected. Luca chattered endlessly about dinosaurs, about his dog, about how his dad couldn't cook but tried anyway. Nico listened with patience, cutting food into smaller pieces, asking Emma questions between bites. What made you become a firefighter? She hesitated. My parents died in a car accident when I was 20.
A drunk driver ran a red light.
I remember standing there, watching the paramedics trying to save them. I decided I wanted to be one of the people who tried. Nico's gaze softened. I'm sorry. It's fine, she said quickly. It was a long time ago. He was quiet for a moment, then said, My wife Isabella, Luca's mother, died 2 years ago. A car crash too. But hers wasn't an accident. Emma looked up sharply. What do you mean? She was targeted, he said simply. Her brakes were tampered with. By a rival crew. I couldn't prove it.
The silence stretched.
The waiter appeared, refilled glasses, vanished again. Emma glanced at Luca, who was humming softly, tracing shapes on the condensation of his cup. I'm sorry, she said finally. For both of you. Nico nodded. I'm trying to make sure Luca never has to live in that world. I'm trying to change things. She didn't know what that meant, not yet. But she wanted to believe him. After lunch, he walked her to her car. Thank you, he said, for giving us this day. It's nothing. It's not nothing, he said, and his voice was so earnest she had to look away. When she got home that evening, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. I enjoyed today. So did he.
Sleep well, Angèle.
She told herself she shouldn't smile. But she did. 2 weeks later, the FBI came for her. It was after another late shift. She stepped out of the station into the sharp bite of November air, and a woman leaned against her car, holding a badge.
Emma Carter.
Emma froze. Who's asking?
Agent Rachel Myers, organisé crime division.
The woman flipped the badge open. We need to talk. Emma's first instinct was to shut it down. If this is about the fire, I've already given my statement. It's not, Rachel said. It's about Nico Moretti.
The name eater like a punch.
She folded her arms, masking the unease crawling up her spine. What about him? Rachel's tone softened, like she was talking to a witness, not a suspect. You've been seen with him. We know you saved his son. You've had contact since then. Lunch, phone calls, gifts.
Are you telling me?
We're tailing him, Rachel said. And you're in his orbit now. Emma's jaw clenched. Then maybe back off. He's trying to go straight.
Rachel gave a short, humorless look.
Is that what he told you? Because the Moretti family is one of the last major outfits still active in New York. They've just gotten smarter about hiding it. And he's at the top of the chain. That doesn't make him a criminal. Maybe not, Rachel said. But the people under him are. And he's responsible for them. You're in a position to help us prove it. Emma stared at her. You want me to spy on him? Not spy, Rachel said. Record. Observe.
Et trust you.
We don't need you to wear a wire every day, just a few conversations. Help us understand what's going on before more people die. And if I say no?
Rachel hesitated.
Then when this case goes public, your name will come up. His lawyers will say you were part of it.
You lose your job.
Your license. Maybe worse. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. So this is blackmail. This is a chance to do the right thing, Rachel said quietly. He's dangerous, Emma. Don't confuse gratitude with goodness. For a long moment, Emma said nothing. Then she took the card Rachel handed her and walked away. That night, she sat in her apartment staring at the business card on her kitchen counter.
The FBI still cooked the light, official and cold.
She thought of Nico's voice saying I'm trying to change things. She thought of Luca's drawings of angels. She thought of her parents' funeral. And she didn't know which version of right she was supposed to believe in. The next evening, Nico called. Luca wants to see you, he said. We're having dinner at home. Tony's making pasta. Come. It wasn't a request. But there was warmth in his voice, not command. Emma hesitated, then agreed. The Moretti estate was quieter this time. She was led into a dining room that looked more like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, chandeliers, crystal glasses. Luca ran to her again, chattering about preschool and dinosaurs. Tony greeted her politely, his expression unreadable. Dinner was surprisingly normal. For a while, it almost felt like family. Until Nico's phone rang. He excused himself, stepping into the hallway.
Emma cooked fragment through the half-open door.
The shipment? No, I said delay it. We're not doing business like that anymore. A pause. His voice hardened. If they touch my people again, I'll burn their entire operation to the ground. He ended the call and came back, mask of calm restored. But Emma couldn't unhear the edge in his voice. That night, when she went to wash her hands, she found herself standing alone in his office for a moment. The shelves were lined with ledgers and old photos. Her fingers brushed a picture frame, Nico, Isabella, and baby Luca. The wife's eyes were bright, full of life.
The caption in Italian read per sempre, la mia luce. Forever, my light.
Emma's throat tightened. Then she saw the desk. A sleek black recorder sat among the papers, red light blinking.
Nico est son surveillance tool.
She reached into her pocket. The tiny device the FBI had given her felt like it weighed 100 pounds. For a long time, she just stood there. Then before she could lose her nerve, she slipped the bug beneath a stack of folders and left the room. When she got home, she sat in the dark for hours, waiting for guilt to turn into relief. It didn't. The next morning, she woke to 3 missed calls from an unknown number. And 1 text message. He's gone. Her pulse spiked. Who? She typed back. The reply came instantly.
Nico.
Abducted.
Don't call anyone.
Her hands trembled. She grabbed her jacket and keys, heart racing. By the time she reached the estate, the gates were open. Security vehicles were scattered across the driveway. Tony was shouting orders, men carrying weapons, phones ringing. What happened? She demanded.
Tony's face was grey, eyes bloodshot.
They took him last night. 2 SUVs intercepted his car in Queens. We found the driver dead.
No trace of Nico. Emma's briscoqued.
Who? Albanians, Tony spat. They want the Moretti territories back. They won't stop until we're wiped out. Emma took a step back, dizzy. Luca's voice called faintly from the stairs.
Where's Daddy?
Tony looked up, then back at her. Get him out of here, he said roughly. They'll come for the boy next. Emma stared at him. You're not serious. I'm dead serious, Tony said. You're the only person they won't suspect yet.
Get Luca somewhere safe.
For the first time since the fire, she saw fear in his eyes. And that's when she realized, whatever she just stepped into, it wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about survival. Emma didn't remember grabbing Luca. She only remembered the way his small hand gripped hers, the way his wide brown eyes searched her face as she pulled him from the mansion. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just asked one question.
Where's my daddy?
She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because she didn't know if Nico was still alive. Because the weight in her chest told her something had shifted, something she couldn't undo.
Emma drove north.
Past Yonkers, past the highway checkpoints. She knew a safe house, an old cabin that belonged to a retired firefighter friend. Remote, no cameras, no questions. She carried Luca inside, wrapped him in a blanket, and held him while he finally cried. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window with a borrowed shotgun across her lap, staring into the woods. Every sound made her flinch. The next morning, she called Marco. He answered on the first ring. Emma. They took him, she said. I know.
Do you know who?
We're sure it's the Albanian crew that's been rebuilding under Radic Berisha. They've been quiet for months. But someone gave them intel. They knew Nico's route. Knew when the bodyguards would be light. She hesitated. You think it was inside? We don't think, Marco said. We know. She tightened her grip on the phone. Who? There was a pause. I'll tell you in person. Meet me. An hour later, she left Luca with a trusted neighbor of the cabin and met Marco at a diner off the Taconic Parkway. He was in plain clothes, no entourage, no obvious weapons. But his eyes were hard. It was Tony, he said. Emma blinked. That doesn't make sense. He's been resisting every change Nico's made, cutting ties with the cartel, pulling out of gun runs, refusing to launder through casinos. Nico wanted out, Tony didn't. No, she said. Tony was the one who told me to get Luca out. He looked terrified. He was covering his tracks, Marco said. Trying to play both sides. Emma tried to absorb it. But, he's like family. That's exactly why he did it, Marco said. He thinks Nico is weakening the legacy.
Giving too much power away. Softening the family for wolves.
And the FBI? She asked. Marco gave her a long look. You think Tony was the one talking to them?
She said nothing.
I know you had contact with them, he said quietly.
I know Nico knew.
Her stomach twisted. How? Nico wasn't stupid. He suspected someone was coming for him. So he set up his own surveillance. The night you planted that bug? He watched you do it. Emma froze. He didn't stop you, Marco added. Because he wanted to believe you'd choose him anyway. A rush of heat flooded her face. Why didn't he say anything? Because he loved you, Marco said. And because he wasn't ready to admit that maybe the one person he trusted was still deciding whether he deserved it. Emma looked away. The shame was unbearable. Marco leaned in. We don't have much time. If Tony's working with Berisha, they'll move Nico to a secondary location soon. After that, he disappears. She met his gaze. Then we find him first. The plan was reckless, born from desperation. But they didn't have the luxury of caution. Through one of Nico's old contacts, they traced Berisha's safe house to an abandoned warehouse near the Brooklyn waterfront, an old shipping facility retrofitted with steel reinforcements and underground cells. They watched the building for 2 days, studying patterns. Armed guards. Supply drops.
No sign of Nico.
Then, on the 3rd night, Emma spotted him. Through a scope, she saw a man with bloodied knuckles being dragged between 2 guards.
Limping.
Barely upright. But it was him. Her chest clenched.
We go tonight.
Marco looked at her. You sure you're ready for this? She tightened the strap of her Kevlar vest. I started this. I'm going to finish it. They entered through the sewer tunnels, filthy, narrow, but unguarded. Inside, the air was thick with mold and gasoline. They moved silently, disabling 2 guards near the south entrance. Emma took the lead through the corridors. She had never killed anyone, but she carried a sidearm now, and her hands didn't shake. They reached the lower cells just before midnight. Nico was chained to a pipe. Shirt torn, face bruised, breathing shallow. Emma ran to him, falling to her knees.
Nico.
His eyes fluttered open. At first, they didn't recognize her. Then they did. You came, he whispered. Of course I did. He tried to smile. You shouldn't have. She unhooked the cuffs, helping him to his feet. We're getting out of here. Marco stood guard at the door, covering their escape route. They moved quickly, but the silence didn't last. Alarms blared as someone tripped a sensor.
Guinfir éruptait d'Upster.
We're blown, Marco said. Run. They sprinted through the hallways, ducking behind machinery, exchanging fire with Berisha's men. Emma stayed close to Nico, helping him move. He was slowing, bleeding from his side. At the exit tunnel, Tony was waiting. He stepped out of the shadows, gun raised. Put him down, he said. Emma raised her weapon. You're working with them. Tony's face was grim. Nico was going to kill the family. Walk away from everything we built. I couldn't let that happen. This isn't loyalty, Emma said. It's cowardice. Tony looked at her, eyes full of old pain.
You don't understand.
He was turning us into something weak. And he let you get too close. You made him soft. Maybe soft is what he needed to stay alive.
Marco stepped behind Tony. Puis a gun down, Allman.
Tony turned, too late. One shot. Tony collapsed. Emma didn't breathe until the light in his eyes faded. They got Nico out that night. At a private clinic upstate, doctors worked to stabilize him. Broken ribs, a punctured lung, dehydration, and infection. Emma sat beside his bed, her clothes stained, her body aching. When he woke, it was past dawn. His voice was weak. You saved me. She nodded, too choked to speak. I knew you planted the bug, he said after a while. Emma lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I watched you do it, he continued. And I still hoped you wouldn't go through with it. I didn't give them anything. I swear. I believe you, he said. Silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand. I want out, he whispered. Not just for Luca. For me.
I'm done with blood.
She squeezed his hand. Then we'll find a way. Together. Outside, the sky was pale with morning light.
The war wasn't over.
But something else had begun. It took Nico 2 weeks to recover enough to walk again. His body healed slowly, but his silence remained heavy. The near-death experience hadn't dulled his instincts, it had sharpened them. He spoke little. He listened more. And when he finally stood on his own, he called for the family council. Emma was in the room when he made the call. You're sure about this? She asked, watching him slide his phone across the table. Yes. They tried to kill you. Some of them might still want to. That's why I need them in front of me, he said.
Nos morts shadows.
The Moretti Council was old blood. Men in their 50s and 60s who had built their empires through decades of loyalty, violence, and silence. They had followed Nico's father. Then Nico. But none of them had ever seen him almost die, until now. They gathered in the library of the Long Island estate, a room lined with dusty books and darker secrets. The air was thick with tension. Emma stood in the corner, arms folded, every muscle tight. Marco was beside her, a quiet sentinel. Nico entered slowly, still limping, but upright. The room fell silent. He didn't sit. He stood before the long oak table and looked each man in the eye. Tony Russo is dead, he said. No reaction. Just a flicker in a few gazes. He betrayed this family, Nico continued. He handed me over to our enemies. He believed I had weakened the legacy of my father. That I was soft. That change meant surrender. He paused. He was wrong. Emma could feel the weight of every word. I have led this family with everything I have, Nico said. And I have tried to do it without bloodshed. I have tried to evolve us into something that can survive beyond violence. That was my mistake. I tried to change too slowly. Tried to please everyone.
Un murmure ran through the room.
But make no mistake.
I am still your boss.
And I am done asking for permission. He walked around the table, his limp audible in the silence. I will not rebuild the old ways. I will not avenge myself through war. I will not burn this city down to prove a point.
Because you want something better. For Luca. For all of you.
One of the older men, Vito Bellini, leaned forward. Better how? Structure. Protection. Legitimacy.
Oui, transition into security consulting, property development, private equity. No more drug. No more blood money.
Anyone who wants out is free to leave with what they came in with. No questions asked. Sounds like retirement, Vito said. It's survival, Nico replied.
We are ghosts in a world that is waking up.
If we don't change, we'll be hunted, locked up, or dead. Another voice spoke up, Dominic Alvarez, younger, shrewder. And if someone disagrees?
Nico Meisais.
Then they make their choice. And I'll make mine. The room went still. Then Emma stepped forward. She hadn't planned to speak. But her chest was tight with everything she'd seen, everything she'd risked. If any of you think Nico has changed because he's weak, she said, you haven't seen him bleed. I have. You haven't watched him get dragged from a cage by the people who wanted his head on a spike. I have. He survived because he had something bigger than fear, he had purpose. She scanned their faces.
I've worn a uniform.
I've pulled bodies from wrecks. I've tried to save lives while holding back tears. But I've never met anyone who fought harder to build something better in a world that doesn't want better.
Silence.
If you can't see what that's worth, then maybe it's not him who doesn't belong here.
Maybe it's you. Marco gave a fin.
Nico didn't move. Then, slowly, Vito stood. You sound like Isabella, he said. She used to talk about a better future too. He looked at Nico. I was loyal to your father.
I've been loyal to you. I'll stay loyal now.
One by one, others followed. Dominic hesitated, then gave a short nod. Only one man, Salvatore the eldest, stood and left without a word. Nico let him go. When the room emptied, he sank into a chair, exhausted. Emma walked over and knelt beside him. You did it, she said softly. No, he murmured. We did. That night, the house was quiet.
Luca was asleep upstairs.
Marco had posted guards at every gate, but for the first time in days, Emma felt something close to peace. She sat with Nico on the back patio, wrapped in a blanket. He held a glass of whiskey, untouched. The council believes in you, she said. They believe in power, he replied. I gave them a version of it they could live with. She looked at him. You didn't have to let me speak. I needed them to hear from someone who didn't grow up in our world. Someone who still believes in right and wrong. Emma hesitated.
I don't know what I believe anymore.
You believe in saving people, he said. That's more than most. She leaned her head on his shoulder. After a long moment he said, "There's something I want to show you tomorrow." "What is it?"
Appla si booked before ye ver me you.
I didn't know why I bought it then. I think I do now. She looked up.
You're not proposing, are you?
He smiled faintly. Not yet. The next day, he took her to the edge of the Hudson Valley. A piece of land overlooking the river.
Rolling hills. Wildflower.
And in the center, a skeleton of a house, half-built, glass and stone and promise. I was going to turn it into a weekend getaway, he said. But now I think, maybe a home.
For you and Luca?
For us. Emma turned slowly, taking it in. I want to build something real, he said. With you. She looked at him, and for the first time since the fire, she let herself believe it might be possible. You're not the man I met that night, she said. No, he said. But I'm becoming the man I want to be.
Because of you.
She walked toward him. Took his hand. I'm not asking for perfect, she said. Just honest. You have that, he said. Every part of me, even the broken ones. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a silver keychain. The recorder. The one she never turned in. I kept it, she said. But I never used it. He took it from her. Then dropped it to the ground and crushed it underfoot. Good, he said. Together, they stood in the unfinished doorway, looking out at the land, at the future. Whatever came next, it would be theirs. 6 months later, spring had fully arrived in the Hudson Valley. The skeleton house Nico once showed Emma was now a real structure. Its frame had been completed, windows installed, walls painted in soft, warm tones. The air smelled of new wood and freshly turned soil. The fields surrounding it were blooming with wildflowers, and a swing hung from an old oak tree where Luca now played with a toy airplane, laughing. Inside, Emma moved through the open-concept kitchen, barefoot, hair still damp from a shower, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a clipboard in the other. The crew was due back in an hour to install the final cabinets. She was going over the checklist when Nico walked in, tugging on a black hoodie, freshly shaven, his expression calm in a way that hadn't been possible for months. You're up early, he said. I'm always up early, Emma replied. Someone has to keep this house from falling into chaos. He smiled, walked over, kissed her cheek. I remember when you didn't want to be here at all. I remember when you were bleeding in a basement, she said, smiling.
Oui veux comme allons ouais.
He looked around the room, at the beams overhead and the light pouring in through the wide windows. Yeah, we have.
Luca est l'auteur car y est through the open back door.
Nico's smile faded slightly, softening. He sleeps better now, he said. Emma nodded. He's not afraid anymore.
That is worth everything.
Nico leaned against the counter, his tone shifting.
Salvatore never came back.
Do you think he's planning something? No. He's old. He walked away when he realized the old rules didn't apply anymore. The rest have stayed quiet. We're too clean now to be interesting to the feds, and too organized to be worth attacking. Emma sipped her coffee.
So this is peas.
Nico looked at her.
À close à ILL et verguette.
A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable. The kind that comes with shared survival. Later that day, Emma drove into town to restock supplies. People there knew her now. Not as the woman with the mobster, but as the EMT who saved a child from a fire, who helped at the community clinic on her days off, who was teaching CPR classes at the local fire station. She had rebuilt something. Not a reputation, but a life. On her way home, her phone buzzed.
A message from Marco.
Need to talk.
Something has come up.
She called him as soon as she parked in the driveway. You okay? She asked. Marco's voice was low. There's been chatter. Quiet, but real. Someone's been asking around about you. Me? Yes. Not Nico. Not Luca. You.
Someone from the whole city.
A name we haven't heard in years, Brennan. Emma frowned. I don't know him. You wouldn't. He was with a rival crew, moved operations west years ago. But he remembers your face from the trial. What trial? The one where the man who killed your parents was sentenced, Marco said. Brennan was tied to that driver. Indirectly. He's been looking into who brought down the crew.
Your name came up.
Emma's stomach tightened. What does he want?
Revenge.
Maybe leverage.
Hard to say yet.
She looked out the window, saw Luca through the glass. Is he coming here?
We are monitoring it.
Just stay alert.
Et elle tel Nico.
No, Marco said. Not yet. He's building something good. Don't drag him back into the dark unless you have to. Emma hung up and leaned her forehead against the steering wheel. For months, she had believed they'd outrun the past. But maybe the past didn't get outrun. Maybe it just waited until you stopped looking over your shoulder. That night, as they tucked Luca into bed, Emma sat a little closer, held his hand a little longer. He blinked up at her. Mommy. It was the first time he'd said it. She froze. Nico, standing in the doorway, looked at her with surprise, then something like relief. Emma smiled, eyes stinging.
Yeah, sweetheart.
Can we go to the lake this weekend? The one with the frogs. Of course, she whispered. We'll catch as many frogs as you want. Later, Emma stepped outside onto the porch. Nico followed a moment later, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. He called you Mommy, Nico said quietly. I wasn't sure I'd ever hear it, she replied. He's always known, Nico said. He just needed to say it out loud. She looked at him.
We happy, Nico.
I don't want to lose this. He studied her.
Something's wrong.
She told him everything. About Brennan. About Marco's call. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, You should have told me earlier. I didn't want to drag you back into the mess. I'm already in it, he said. With you. She looked away. If they try to use me. They won't, Nico said.
You won't let them.
And if they try to use Luca? She asked, voice tight. Nico's jaw clenched. Then I'll become the man I was trying to leave behind. They stood in silence for a while. Eventually, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I was going to wait for a better time, he said. But maybe there's never going to be one. She opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, elegant and understated, and next to it, a child's drawing, a family of 3 standing under a tree. The son in the corner had a smiley face. He drew that last week, Nico said. Said he wanted to give it to you when I asked.
Emma blinked back tears.
Is this really what you want? He stepped closer.
You want a life. Not just survival.
I want you. All of it.
The messy part, the dangerous part.
I don't want to just protect you. I want to build with you. She didn't say yes. She didn't need to. She just kissed him, slow and deep and certain. They stayed there a long time. Later, when she slipped the ring onto her finger, she whispered, This doesn't mean I'm safe. I know, he said. But it means I'm not running anymore. The past would always exist. There would always be threats, shadows, moments of doubt. But now, they had something stronger. They had chosen each other. And for the first time, Emma believed they had a future that wasn't built on fear, but on trust and fire, and the kind of love you bleed for.